A parent who says a Linn-Mar teacher sexually assaulted his daughter feels ignored. The district placed the teacher on leave and allowed him to resign without any explanation to the family or to the public.
TV9's chief investigative reporter Josh Scheinblum explains why it's difficult to get answers.
Nowhere else to turn. That's why a Marion family says they're telling the story of their daughter's alleged sexual abuse to I-9. Marion police say they've investigated the case twice, once as a sexual assault, most recently as a simple assault. In the end, police say there simply wasn't enough evidence for the incidents that happened 2 years ago. But what's frustrating the family most is what they see as a lack of action.
It started in 7th grade, but I didn't really realize, it wasn't considered sexual assault in my mind, but then in 8th grade, that's when it kind of turned to, more of a serious situation.
In this recording at the Child Protection Center in Hiawatha, a then 15-year-old girl explains her alleged sexual assault to a forensic interviewer.
It was, again, mostly my butt, but there were about 2 incidences with my breast and 1 incidence with my vagina.
The girl says the abuse happened repeatedly from 2014 to 2016 in the Linn-Mar School District during school hours at the hands of her teacher.
What was the person's name?
Mr.
She was a student at Excelsior Middle School at the time. We made several attempts to contact the teacher to get their side of the story, but we haven't heard back.
He said he'd fail me if I told anybody about it.
I take that as a threat.
Ian Gerard is the girl's father. Why did you reach out to us?
I reached out to you because I have a problem with just about everything that I've been told. And I'm not a person given to flights of fancy or conspiracy theories or anything like that. But there's just too much that doesn't add up.
Gerard tells I-9 his family brought their allegations to a counselor at Linn-Mar High School in early October. The teacher was subsequently placed on paid administrative leave on October 18th, where he has remained ever since. Is there any reason we shouldn't believe your daughter? Does she have a track record of making things up?
No, not at all.
Marion police back that up, telling us there is no evidence she's lying. Their investigation uncovered a letter Gerard's daughter wrote with another unnamed Excelsior student. It describes the teacher's behavior as perverted and pedophilic, adding, "We have thought very much about this issue before it was addressed with an administrator." The letter does not mention sexual assault, but the girl says she reported the sexual abuse to an associate principal at Excelsior in 2016.
He pulled out a legal pad and he was writing notes and stuff on that, and he said there was going to be an investigation, and I asked him about 2 or 3 weeks later where it was, where our case was in the investigation, who it was going to, who was handling it, and he said he couldn't say anything due to legal reasons.
But we could not find any records of her complaints in the girl's student records.
I would have at least expected someone to call me on the phone and say, "Hey, we have a situation, your daughter has made a report. We wanted you to be aware." Nobody did that.
Did they send you an email? Did anyone try to reach out to you?
Nothing.
There's also this paper trail to consider. It's Gerard's daughter's medical files. Around the same time she was allegedly being touched by her teacher, she started being hospitalized for depression and suicidal thoughts. It happened repeatedly from 2015 through 2017, and records show that it took years of treatment before she ultimately told medical professionals that she was sexually assaulted.
We had hospitalized on several different occasions because of this. Her behavior and her demeanor overall was understandable given what she'd went through, but at that point we still didn't know.
The district says it conducted an investigation of its own, but refuses to release any of those findings. I-9 did obtain this, a separation agreement allowing the teacher to resign in lieu of termination. It let him stay on leave and keep getting paychecks through June, but the district has refused to tell us or the Gerard family why they saw an end to the teacher's employment.
People need to know what's going on. People need to know that this happened. And unfortunately now we feel as a family that we're left with no other option than, one, to sit here and talk to you, and 2, and that is to file suit.
I invited Superintendent Quinton Shepard and every member of the Linn-Mar School Board to take part in an interview for this story. The only response we received was from the district's attorney, who told us Superintendent Shepard would be declining that offer, adding the school district is subject to federal and state laws regarding confidentiality of student and personnel information. However, the head of Iowa's Public Information Board says that's not entirely true. We asked Executive Director Margaret Johnson about the district's refusal to explain the teacher's resignation. She tells us the law states if a public employee resigns in lieu of termination, then the government body needs to release the documented reasons and rationale for the termination. We sent that to the district, but they have not responded. In studio, Josh Scheinblum, KCRG-TV9 News.
Well, we now know Linn-Mar allowed a teacher to resign while he was facing sexual abuse allegations and had faced similar accusations from students multiple times before.
It's an update to a 9/9 investigation we brought you this past May, and one we've been working on for a year. KCRG-TV9's Josh Scheinblum explains what he found in newly obtained documents.
In short, files show this was only the latest in a pattern of behavior. I-9 has repeatedly asked Linn-Mar schools to explain why the district allowed Robert Ortiz to resign in lieu of termination. Ortiz had been on paid leave since last October and stayed there through his resignation, which took effect in June. KCRG was able to obtain a police investigative file, including Ortiz's personnel file under an open records request. It reveals a pattern of complaints against Ortiz that started almost immediately and went on for years.
That is disgusting. I'm sorry, you gotta give me a minute.
That was the moment we told Ian Gerard, the father of a former Linn-Mar student, what we found in Robert Ortiz's personnel file. It reveals district leadership had documented behavior issues long before his daughter reported Ortiz sexually abused her.
That was news to you?
I had no clue. This is disgusting. Really, these people are in charge of our children and they're covering stuff like this up.
Last year, Gerard's daughter reported to Marion police that Ortiz had sexually assaulted her repeatedly on school grounds over a period of years when she was a student at Excelsior Middle School 2 years earlier. I-9 has invited Ortiz multiple times to tell his side of the story, even sending him a certified letter, but he's yet to respond.
There were about 2 incidences with my breasts and 1 incidence with my vagina.
In 2016, Gerard's daughter gave a letter to Excelsior administrators that she wrote with another student, describing Ortiz's behavior as pedophilic and perverted. But when the Gerard family began asking Linn-Mar schools for more information about Ortiz, they say they were stonewalled. A letter from the district's attorney they received went so far as to insist that his daughter's letter was all they were aware of that could be related to her alleged sexual abuse.
We've heard nothing from them.
Gerard's daughter came forward with her allegations last November, and while police were ultimately unable to prove claims made from more than 2 years prior, their investigative file does note that Linn-Mar schools had documented similar accusations made by more than 10 other students. Those claims started in September 2014. Ortiz's first year with the district. That month, a district investigation found Ortiz was sharing unprofessional content on his social media accounts, some of it of a sexual nature, and posted during time he was supposed to be working. His punishment? A letter of counseling and a written warning. In January 2016, an almost identical finding from a new investigation led to another written warning. 2 months later, Ortiz received another letter of counseling after 6 students had complained he was invading their personal space and leering at female students. The district again mandated Ortiz undergo counseling in January of 2017, this time after several students said Ortiz would rub their shoulders and touch their backs. More mandated counseling came the following September, after complaints about Ortiz's behavior online and with students in the classroom. Ortiz was placed on paid administrative leave last October, after a student claimed Ortiz tapped her on the butt in class. In that case, the family declined to press charges, so long as the teacher was not allowed back in the classroom.
What has happened in this case is what's called a silent settlement agreement, which results in a mobile molester.
Mary Jo McGrath is an attorney who's been training school districts around the country, including those right here in Iowa, about educator sexual misconduct and how administrators should investigate such behavior for the better part of 2 decades. McGrath believes in this case, Linn-Mar Schools is breaking federal law.
Title IX requires an investigation when the district gets notice that behavior is occurring that is either sexual harassment or sexual abuse. And that notice requires them that they start an investigation. That investigation requires that the complaining party be notified of what's happening in the investigation at the different steps. They also have a right to be notified and may even have a right to a copy of the investigation.
The Girard family says that's not happened and are at a point where they think the only way they may ever find out the full extent to what district officials know about Robert Ortiz's behavior in the classroom is to take them to court.
I've tried to make contact a couple of times. I've been told by people's assistants that they will not talk to me, cannot talk to me. That's it.
We checked with districts where Ortiz worked before Linn-Mar, and all said they had no public records of any issues with him. Ortiz still holds an Iowa teaching license. It doesn't expire until 2019, though we could not find that Ortiz is teaching anywhere this school year. I invited Ann Lebo, the executive director of the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners, the state agency that regulates teaching licenses, for an interview to explain how a teacher with red flags in their past may be able to keep their teaching license. She declined. And we should note, since part 1 of our story aired, Superintendent Quinton Shepard has left Linn-Mar for another job as a superintendent in Texas. We invited the current administration for an interview regarding this new information 2 days ago, but we've not heard back. In studio, Josh Scheinblum, KCRG-TV9 News.
The Linn-Mar School District might be facing a state or even a federal investigation. An I-9 investigation revealed a middle school teacher had faced documented complaints and allegations of sexual misconduct. The district allowed him to resign instead of firing him. That allowed him to keep his state teaching license. Our chief investigative reporter, Josh Scheinblum, joins us now. And Josh, elected leaders are reacting to those findings now.
They are. In fact, Bruce, after we released our findings last week, we also sent them to several state and federal agencies, along with many of our own elected leaders. Now, our question to them was what, if anything, they think should be done. Our report detailed 3 years of student complaints against Robert Ortiz for social media comments, leering at female students and touching the butt of one student. That's on top of one student's allegation that Ortiz sexually assaulted her 2 years ago. The Iowa Department of Education says school districts are required to report sexual abuse allegations to the Board of Educational Examiners. That's the state agency that regulates teaching licenses in the state. Now, the department says they would investigate if they were to receive a complaint regarding a district's failure to follow policies. And it turns out that complaint may not be far away. Republican State Representative Ashley Hinson of Marion says that she and her Republican House colleague Walt Rogers of Cedar Falls will be formally requesting both agencies investigate Linn-Mar Schools.
The allegations have been made and the history, the track record is there. And so I think from that perspective, it's on us to go to the BOEE and say, hey, you need to take a look at this and make sure that things are being done as they are supposed to be being done.
Democratic Representative Art Stade says he, too, is asking both the board and the Department of Education to investigate. Governor Kim Reynolds' office had this to say: if the allegations are accurate, we would expect a complaint to be filed with the Iowa Board of Educational Examiners seeking disciplinary action. Now, we reached out to the BOEE for comment, but we're told all complaints are confidential unless it finds probable cause for action. Senators Chuck Grassley, Joni Ernst, along with Congressman Rod Blum and Dave Loebsack, have all said that they've been in touch with the U.S. Department of Education concerning our investigation and have asked them to look into it. And Bruce, we again reached out to leadership with the Linn-Mar Community School District, asking them for comment again, but we've not heard back.
All right. And you'll stay on top of this as it goes on.
We will.
Thanks, Josh.